As an academic and a historian of Western esotericism, I'm accustomed to talking about other people. Now, it may come as a surprise to you, but most historical people are typically long dead. So for me to stand here discussing a piece of fiction that I wrote is kind of awkward. I mean, I'm not dead, which I suppose is reassuring in a way, at least for you. When Emily Auger put out a call for authors to read and comment on a tarot-related excerpt from their fiction, I simply couldn't resist. Apparently, every other author resisted just fine. This left me as the only one presenting in this particular format. Awkward. Anyway, as I'm used to shedding light on my research topics through unpublished manuscripts, correspondence, and other archival data, bear in mind that this is not that talk. So sit back while I try to simultaneously be the artist reading from his work and the academic who dissects it. Kind of like Zach Galifianakis interviewing himself on Between Two Ferns. For those unfamiliar with my work, my specialization is the esoteric world of Aleister Crowley and his circle. This includes the Thoth Tarot, envisioned by Crowley and executed by artist Frida Lady Harris. I curate a webpage devoted to documenting appearances of the Thoth Tarot in mainstream media, including movies, television, comic books, and album cover artwork. I've also published about the deck in 2 academic anthologies, and have given Thoth Tarot presentations around the world. This includes speaking twice to the PCAACA Tarot panel about the Thoth deck. The Billionth Monkey is a weird fantasy satire about how social media, with its echo chambers, confirmation biases, and fake news, shapes how we see the world. I accomplish this by way of urban legends taking on a reality of their own. Oddly enough, my premise effectively predicted that we would wind up in a post-truth, alternate facts world where current events are not only dominated, but actually shaped by what certain people say on Twitter. The book's title is a riff on the well-known hundredth monkey theory, that once a critical number of animals in the species learns a particular behavior, that behavior automatically becomes part of the entire species' instinctual repertoire. Modern legend has it that Japanese snow monkey researchers in the 1950s began giving yams to their monkeys. On the ground, these became sandy and unpleasant to eat. Eventually, one monkey learned to wash the yams clean. This monkey taught the others, and they did likewise until every monkey on the island knew this trick. When the researchers moved to another island and presented yams there, surprise, the monkeys immediately knew the yam washing trick. How is this possible? This story was popularized by biology heretic Rupert Sheldrake, who says that this phenomenon happens through the process of formative causation. He posited the existence of morphogenetic fields that govern the development, morphology, and behavior of a species. The functioning of these fields is dictated by a great volume of historical precedent, but a critical mass in contemporary times can also shape its functioning. That critical mass is metaphorically 100. I extend this concept by asking, if 100 monkeys can change the behavior of a species, what happens if enough monkeys, in this case humans, believe something that isn't true? Could it alter reality? When I began plotting the Billionth Monkey, Facebook hit its first billion users. The rest, as they say, is hysterical. The novel's crazy chase through urban legends, famous locales, and pop culture references is anticipated by the trope of a tarot reading in the very first chapter. Having extricated himself from an awkward encounter with an afterlife insurance salesman and the hermit who lives in New Orleans St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, our hero, popular culture professor Niles Bellinger, literally bumps into Gabriella, the Café du Monde waitress that he fancies but is too socially awkward to ask out. Their collision knocks to the ground the objects that she's carrying, and thus begins our reading. So, Gabriella says, "Small worlds collide, eh? Funny bumping into you here." She stooped down and began to collect her belongings off the ground. As he helped her, Bellinger remarked, Believe it or not, I'm here doing field work. You? Today is the name day of mi abuela. I'd like to visit her here and take some time to meditate on life. He looked down at the handful of cards that he had gathered off the ground. Their graphic backs featured a stylized cross unlike any he had seen before. Each of its three-lobed arms was a different color, yellow on top, green on the bottom, red and blue on the left and right sides. At the center bloomed a rose, its 3 concentric rows of petals, arranged and painted to look like an artist's color wheel. 3 green triangles radiated from behind each pair of arms. The whole image sat on an earth-toned background of tessellated diamonds that radiated from a central point invisible behind the rosy cross. And to read cards, he asked. They help me to focus my thoughts. Bree stood up again. I suppose you might say my tata was a bruja. She always had folk remedies whenever one of us kids got sick. And whenever we had to make a major decision, she helped us to consult El Tarot. Right. A colleague of mine organizes a tarot panel at the annual meetings of the Popular Culture Association. That was the extent of his knowledge of the subject. He was more likely to attend a paper session on folklore or comic books. At an awkward impasse, he decided to pivot to his original motive. Listen, I was wondering if I might ask you. To read your cards? She guessed eagerly. She put her hand upon his, which held the few cards he had gathered from the ground. Sure. It looks like you've already selected your hand. He looked down, then back at her. What? No, I wasn't thinking of a question. Even better. You hold the answer to an unasked question. She took the small stack of cards from his hands and, without flipping them over, counted through them. 7 cards. That makes for a pretty good spread. Let's see what you have. The first card depicted a figure dressed in green, with yellow boots spread-eagled across the card as if he were about to burst through the borders of the artwork. A pair of horns protruded from his yellow head, and a tiger grasped and bit his left leg. Various objects swirled around this person, a dove, a butterfly, a caduceus, even a crocodile. These creatures traced a swirling vortex around the green man, creating the impression that the viewer might fall into the card. It was the Fool. Its number was 0. This is your significator, she announced. It represents you. Pfft, he replied. The Fool? Thanks a lot. It's not like that, she reassured him. The tarot recounts the journey of the Fool. A loco represents someone at the beginning of their journey, the journey of life. He is innocent, carefree, spontaneous, maybe a little naive. But he also represents air, the intellect, so he isn't stupid. He's just idealistic, his head in the clouds. Since the Fool can also be put at the end of the tarot, this tells us that he may appear foolish, but he is really blissed out with the wisdom gained on his journey. Oh, kind of like the Beatles' Fool on the Hill. Bree smiled back blankly, and Bellinger mentally kicked himself. The Beatles were probably what her tata listened to. Way to charm the ladies. Well, the drowning man flailed, I am on my way to the Popular Culture Association's annual convention. Well, there you go. The next card she turned over resembled the cubist nightmare of Tolkien's Barad-dûr. A large, fiery, unblinking eye in the dark, radiating chaos and menace, hovered atop a tower which collapsed in unnatural shapes and sent black crystalline figures of people plummeting toward what looked like a fire-breathing lamprey. Numbered 16, it was the tower. That looks pretty unpleasant, Bellinger mused. This card says that something is going to turn your world upside down. It will change the status quo, shatter your assumptions, challenge your prejudices. You'll have to rethink the situation you're in, but it will be liberating. Oh, kind of like Thomas Kuhn's idea of the paradigm shift. She paused for a moment. I'm not familiar with that. Really smooth, Don Juan. The next card showed a 10-spoked wheel floating on a purple background. Lightning bolts flashed behind it, starry shapes hovered all around, and swirls extended tentacle-like beyond the borders of the card. A sphinx surmounted the wheel, while an ape ascended the left side and an alligator man with a sword hung off the right. Card number 10 was Fortune. "Oh, this is very good," Bree remarked. "It's the Wheel of Fortune. You will reach a turning point for the better. You may come into wealth, take relationship to the next level, or maybe even meet your destiny." Bellinger liked the sound of taking a relationship to the next level, perhaps with a beautiful cartomancer. Flipping over the next card revealed a mercurial nude with her true skin, orbited by a variety of similarly yellow objects that he was juggling. A winged disc, loving cup, engraved disc, Egyptian staff, stiletto, torch, stylus, and papyrus. From below, a baboon climbed the geometric latticework of lines emanating from behind the central figure. This card was the Magus, and its number was 1. A magician changes the world through sheer willpower, bending the universe into line with his intentions. He is an enlightened being and teaches the truth. But, she tapped the lower right corner of the card, he is shadowed by the ape of Thoth, who repeats the magician's words to others. These words come off sounding incredible or nonsensical, which is why the magician is called the Lord of Illusion. This is his curse, his cross to bear. You have the opportunity here to take charge of your life and make some changes for the better. Bellinger nodded, not so much in agreement, but to acknowledge her impressive command of fortune-telling jargon. She obviously believed this stuff, even if he considered it to be nonsensical, much like his references to the Beatles and Thomas Kuhn. The next card depicted a three-eyed goat with extremely long twisted horns and a Fu Manchu mustache. Although standing, the goat seemed to float in space, while some kind of shaft rose into the skies behind it. A caduceus stood guard in front. Below the goat's hooves rested 2 balls, each filled with 4 bluish-white figurines. This was card number 15, the Devil. This card, Bree explained, is a warning about materialism. Success can make someone a prisoner to their bank balance. In his Robin Hood Tarot book, Michael Short says this card is the Monkey Trap, a box with a hole and a banana inside. The hole is just big enough for the monkey to reach in, but too small to pull his hand out while holding the banana. If the monkey refuses to let go, he's trapped by his own greed. So, while you may enjoy good fortune, she held up the previous card, then switched to the current one, be careful not to get too sucked in. Too much desire is a trap. The next card showed a golden coin, its outer rim engraved with the Greek letters spelling To Megatherion, the inside inscribed with a 7-pointed star. It rested on an opalescent bed of blue, green, brown ovals that may have been shells or wings. He wasn't really sure. This card was numbered 1, and its title was the Ace of Discs. Bellinger quipped, "Is that like the Ace of Base?" She shook her head, his reference once again lost on her. "This isn't one of the suits," she continued undeterred. "So far, everything has been a trump, one of the 22 cards of the major arcana, which represent major events. The Ace of Discs is a pip, one of the 56 minor arcana cards. They reflect influences on those events, like people and circumstances. The Ace of Discs is the root of the powers of Earth, or the physical world. Discs are coins, symbolizing money and all the things that it can buy. They also represent metaphorical riches. Tied in with the other cards, this confirms that you will be fulfilled, either inwardly or outwardly." As she turned over the last card, she stopped halfway and remarked, "Oh, how cliché." It depicted the figure of a very animated black skeleton, gamboling away from the viewer with a scythe in one hand. On its bony head was a black pharaonic crown, and with its scythe it stirred egg-like bubbles out of new life from the decaying sediment of the spirits of the departed. Other imagery around the edges of the card included a scorpion, a serpent, an eagle, and a fish. The card was numbered 13, and its name was Death. What? Bellinger asked, unsure why she made that remark. She flipped the card the rest of the way over and laid it face up on top of the previous 6. If this was a crappy movie, I'd say, oh, it's the butterfly card, and then you'd die horribly. Bellinger scowled. That sounds rather dodgy. But it is the butterfly card, she stressed. It represents transformation, sublimation, change. Death is only one form of that. It's similar to the Tower. But the change is natural. Think less cataclysm, more cocoon. This card represents Scorpio in the zodiac, and if you know any Scorpios, you know how reserved, hard to read, and even secretive they can be. Any change with them is under the hood, not the paint job. So, a horrible yet subtle demise. She chuckled. What I see is that you're about to set out on a journey. The first card is you. The next and last cards, the Tower and Death, are bookends. They're both ruled by Mars, so these events will create buku change in you and how you see the world. But, like the Magus, you will have the opportunity to influence how things turn out. Then we have all those materialistic cards in the middle. Fortune, the Devil, and the Ace of Discs. These suggest that you will come out ahead. Just don't get trapped by the illusion. That seems kind of vague, doesn't it? It's pretty coherent for a handful of cards that you randomly knocked into the road. And that ends our reading. With this tarot reading, the audience is presented with a narrative through which to anticipate subsequent events in the Billionth Monkey. To a degree, this narrative does pan out. However, the function of the reading is actually to obscure the fact that I chose these 7 cards to foreshadow upcoming events far more literally, so that the reader who looks back at this reading would understand the cards completely differently. This card, the Fool, does function as the significator in the reading, but it also represents the fact that when urban legends start to actually happen, Niles Bellinger doesn't know why. He suspects one of his students is a murderous sociopath, hell-bent on reenacting fatal folklore. Bellinger's skeptical chairperson tells him to get his head out of the ivory tower and see the world as it really is. Speaking of towers, while subsequent events truly do turn Bellinger's world upside down and force him to reassess the world as it really is, this upending takes place at an iconic pop culture location. Devil's Tower, complete with references to Close Encounters and the lost culinary art of mashed potato sculpture. Double entendre occurs with the Fortune card when Bree tells Niles that he may meet his destiny. The literal reference in this case is to the social media addicted character Destiny Jones. Turns out, she's the real-life butt of a few embarrassing urban legends. But if urban legends are fake, then she shouldn't exist. The fact that she does, and accompanies Bellinger throughout the rest of the novel, is the catalyst for our college kid to reevaluate everything that has happened. Bree's words about the magician prove very important later, when Bellinger realizes something. If contemporary myths are becoming real, then he, as an expert in urban legends, can use his encyclopedic knowledge to his advantage. One of the big reveals in this book is that our antagonist's origin is far more infernal than Tulane University, or the school he transferred from, the unfortunately acronymed Friends University of Central Kentucky. We're venturing even deeper into spoiler territory here, so I'll just say that events in the story involve a big old disc that is decidedly not a pentacle. I simply can't spoil this one, but suffice to say, in this reading, it is not the butterfly card. In conclusion, the Billionth Monkey opens with a tarot reading that purports to lay out the course of upcoming events in the novel. This reading is made convincing through its informed interpretation of the cards, the liberal use of cardomancy jargon, and an appeal to published authority. In this case, the Robin Wood Tarot book is kind of my Necronomicon. It also helps that this is, by far, the least weird scene in the entire book. Its seriousness helps to sell the narrative. The purpose of all this, however, is misdirection, to subvert readers' expectations and to obfuscate a very different and more literal foreshadowing of events through the cards. Thank you.